War, 1861 to 1865. This will be our new Confederate playthrough. It is taken from a Twitch live stream. The first episode is designed to be somewhat of a tutorial, get started into the game. I hope you enjoy it. Please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment so that I may continue to improve the content. Let's get into the episode. I am going to start a new campaign with an avatar. So we will have ourselves my name, we're a volunteer, born March 21st, 1842 in Georgia, showing nearly full 4 stars in initiative and the admin, 2 stars in cunning and leadership. It'll be interesting to see with this version because I have seen so far that initiative and leadership in-game are flipped from what you pick here. Alright, so we are in the game. We're going to start a campaign. We have several to choose from. The tutorial where you can only play the Union. It starts at July 15th. Goes from there. So if you're wondering why you can't click the southern icon, Confederate flag over here, that's why. Go to spring of 1861. Historical policies. Now this is going to be for your AI opponent. You can pick these if you would like. I think it's fair just to go ahead. Well, let's see. 50% less available ships and weapons. National morale -5. See, I almost want to. That would help us or hurt us, which is a good thing. But they have Kansas industrialization, which does lower national morale by 5, but it increases the population by 20%. So this is actually a huge boon for the Union. Indian Wars gives both North and South a touch of military experience. It will keep the army fighting an ensuing Indian War. So there will be some, the U.S. regular army is both increased and continue to fight the Indian threats as they pop up. But we will be fighting as the Confederate States of America, the CSA, the Confederacy, the Rebs, the traitors, whatever you want to call them. Difficulty, we're going to go very hard. Aggressiveness goes from calm all the way up to very high. I would like to just go with elevated. The aggressiveness, if it is too high, the AI will just send small forces, unprepared. I do want to get into some battles, so I don't want them to not be aggressive enough. Then again, this new version does seem to address those issues and the issues of armies swapping theaters and not advancing across the whole line. So we'll see how that goes. As far as the starting choices for the South, I'm going to go ahead and unselect the 3. To start with, the Old Dominion. Now, it is my understanding that the Confederacy will get Virginia to secede with or without this. The benefit, however, is that your capital is moved from Montgomery, Alabama to Richmond, Virginia. Montgomery, Alabama would be fairly easy to conquer for the North. Head down the Mississippi, head up from, how are you doing, Hoffman? Head up from the Gulf of Mexico. So we will take Old Dominion. Starting a new campaign here, the new version 009. I am doing very well. Just kind of running through the choices of the setup here. So Kansas is a slave state. We just chose Kansas as a free state for the Union. So I don't think it makes much sense, but it does increase our support and support in all slave states. Slaves to the west does increase the territory of the population in Arizona and New Mexico by 25%, which I think kind of gets ridiculous, um, in my opinion. Arizona and New Mexico were sparsely populated, were not going to be heavily settled, whether or not they were pro-slavery or not. So getting tens of thousands of troops out of Arizona and New Mexico doesn't make sense to me. Also, slavery does very well in agricultural pursuits. Arizona and New Mexico at this time had very little agriculture or agriculture available until you got you know modern farming techniques to reach the land and a lot more people. So I could see like a 5% increase in population for this one. I think 25% is too much. The Apostles of Disunion does increase our support, but also increases theirs. Um, the thing is, our support's already pretty close to 100. Theirs is the one that needs help. So I think this one would actually help the North more than the South. Filibustering, yeah, having Cuba, Honduras as available, or as, I guess, territories of the U.S. doesn't make sense. Even if the southern goal, of course, was to encompass the entire Gulf of Mexico in a slave haven empire. But for that to happen in the 1840s or 50s is highly unlikely, I think. King Cotton, all plantations will start the campaign with a higher upgrade level, support in all slave states +5, European intervention +20. It was the historic policy the South chose. You had cotton production being increased in Egypt and India at this point in time. So the Southern strategy of King Cotton, of withholding the cotton exports from Europe to force them into the war, backfired because it actually made Europe look to India and Egypt to increase their cotton production. Um, we may go for this. I like the industrialization. Historically, you got some industrialization through Georgia and Virginia specifically, and Tennessee, some in Kentucky, but not much elsewhere. You did have a lot of European people coming to the South, especially through New Orleans into Appalachia. Um, Mostly, a small percentage of the Irish would come south instead of north. So I think this is kind of supposing that New Orleans and New York were more equal, as far as getting European immigration. Arms agents organized the movement of weapons to southern armories and forts. The number of weapons available to the Confederacy has increased by 50%, and Springfield weapon types can be made available for production. Um, Taking this then doesn't make sense to get the Richmond rifles and the Fayetteville rifles, which I'd rather have than Springfields. So I don't, just from a historical standpoint, I don't like Arms Agent. Native allies, it makes perfect sense, from the South and the North. The North is still fighting Indian wars. The South gets to at least claim that they had no or very little part in it. Confederate support in Indian Territory increased by 25. This isn't going to provide, the number of volunteers is doubled, but it doesn't provide that many more troops. But I do think you can at least utilize a couple Indian, Native American units. The Southern Pacific Railroad, this is assuming that the Northern Pacific Railroad does not go through, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific. I actually like this one the best, over King Cotton or industrialization from a historic standpoint. This increases our credit rating by 2, transportation capacity and construction speed by 25%. The transportation capacity transportation capacity is needed, but it increases by 25%. It's not that huge to begin with for the South, so they could use it really badly. Construction speed, the South will rarely get to complete more than one or two railroads. Credit rating is huge. The South will start to lose the credit rating quickly. Historically, also, I think this is a very easy argument that the railroad leaves from the Gulf of Mexico across instead of the Midwest. I think it would have gone through the Midwest also, but you have an easier pass through Arizona, New Mexico, than you do across the Rockies through Colorado, Utah, places like that. Um, so I think the Southern Pacific Railroad could have happened. I don't want to take King Cotton. I don't want European intervention in my game. Um, and just from a logical economic standpoint, I get where they're coming from. I get why they may have thought it would work, but it would never work. So order delays. This all orders will need to be prepared and delivered before they are carried out. So this slows down the actions in battle. Fog of war. Um, I know we get fog of war. I don't know if the AI does. Readiness system, I really like. I don't like armies just being able to move all over the place without rest. I think that's silly and ahistorical. Feuds. You did get feuds throughout the war. Van Dorn was famous for them. Jackson was famous for them, especially against Maxi Gregg. So I think this needs to be on. Might be need to be dialed back in future versions. Auto manage. I don't want the AI auto managing anything. With that, I think that's a pretty good explanation of setting up a game. Let's go ahead and get in. All right. Waiting for the load. All right. Almost there. Almost there. All right. About half. All right. So, Hoffman, we are starting a new game. Anything in particular you would like to see? Um, I'm sure you know how the first couple months of the war are. All right. Game is loaded. Let's go and get rid of the field book here. So to start with, strategy. Probably seen this screen 100 times. Um, Menfield is about the same. Loyal states 26 to 13. That will change. No, it won't. I think that already includes Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Do their planification. I like it. We'll definitely do some work on the economy through this playthrough. I do want to explore that side of the game a little bit more. As far as the military goes, starting very small. Actually, that's not what I wanted to do. We will do a little bit of recruiting, especially when it comes to the batteries. 90 is about as big as we can get for quite a while in the war. So I think to go ahead and get these troops in action. Let's see, we'll get some South Carolinians. There we go. And then we'll use, make sure we've got, one of the things I always like to do in my streams is to make sure that the commanders of the units are at least from that state, at least on the brigade level, unless there's a historic reason for not doing so. And having roots down in Savannah, Hugh Mercer will be the first Georgian to lead. This is South Carolina. So let's get South Carolinian Winder. Perfect. Go back to all. And Florida State Militia. Let's go ahead and start getting Texas, Louisiana. Oh, no. I did not want to do that, so we will delete. Yeah, Louisiana. Come on. Louisiana, artillery, recruit. Let's go ahead, get some Mississippians. And Alabama. Yeah. So we've got Texas. Just want to keep doing the same thing. I know this is probably a lot more detailed as far as the order of battle goes than is needed. If I don't spot any, let's see, do have, all right, then I'll just grab a political officer for an artillery command. Whitfield, perfect. Louisiana. Let's go. But for me, this part adds a little bit of history. Lets me get to know the commanders a little bit better. And that's one of the more fun aspects for myself is kind of getting into the nitty gritty. William Whiting, he would already command a division by the time of the Peninsula Campaign in Virginia. So, yeah, let's just get the political commanders out of the way. Canty, he might actually be a decent commander. Pelham, I know he's from Alabama. He will be the one that we take to Virginia. He will be the commander that I end up taking to the first horse artillery regiments eventually. As far as ships go, I'm going, what number to build for? All right. Can I get... All right. Exit out. Come back in. See if that works. All right. I'm going to build 4 frigates. There they are. Doesn't look like it wants to show us stats, but 4 frigates, that gives us 200 guns. They'll complete relatively quickly. I would also like to get some riverine ships. It doesn't look like it wants to show us the stats on them, so I'll just hold off on that. We can always do that a little bit later. Weapons, and you don't... Am I going to have to... Oh... Available depot. There we go. 24-pound howitzers are probably the only group of this that I'm going to build from the beginning. Just as a clue, not produced means that you don't have the technology. Production only means that you can't import it, you have to build it. And for that, You go over here and select the number of pieces you would like. It changes the amount of money and the estimated delivery time. 512 pieces would take nearly 2 years. And the timing is affected by the standardization, so there is some benefit to doing smaller orders, even though they might not be the most time efficient. Springfield's rifle muskets, we don't have the license to produce. Then you've got Springfield Musketoons, production ceased, obsolete. My understanding is that you would not be able to build these because even Mississippi rifle, Plains rifle, fall under the restart production. So same with the smoothbore gun, 12-pounder. That's all we've got. Get rid of this. All right, finances. Not auto-managed. Everything as high as we can on the taxes and tariffs. From the beginning, I want to increase everything except for politics as high as it will go. Once I get the projects in place that I want, I will cut these out and reduce the funding. But I would keep them at max until we get where we need to go. Policies. Just generally, you have funding, agriculture, industry, military, and diplomacy. Since we did not take agriculture or king cotton or industrialization, we cannot go past the second tier. King cotton 3 and industrialization 3 both would require those selected. Funding, right now we have a AAA credit rating. If that falls below the B-, we are not allowed to recruit any more units or construct ships. So that can have a major impact. Not something we need to worry about in the first year of the war, but something we will focus on heavily in late 62, 63, and on. Militia acts, 1, 2, and 3 year. These will increase the number of recruits you have and the length of time they serve. One of the things that I was wondering about is the Conscription Act, where it says existing volunteer contracts are lengthened to 3 years. Which makes me wonder, could you just go with military 1, military 2, conscription, instead of 1, 2, 3, 6 policies to get to conscription and 3 years of the militias? So I think we'll try that. It goes against everything to not get the militia up as quickly as possible. Historically, the South were already looking into conscription by early 62. We will start with military funding as our first. Diplomacy is probably where we'll go second. Ships, let me just see. So we got the 4 frigates. Yeah. It is not letting me see what these ships actually do. But for the sake of argument, sloops of war, we will build 4. I'm going to go for not steamships for my ocean-going forces. Barks we will build 4 of. Brigs 4 of. There we go. Barks and brigs. Sloops of war, 9 guns. The brigs are smaller but have more guns. And then we will get some gunboats going for the river fleets. So they're down here. We'll definitely get some ironclads going eventually. All right, we've done policies, projects. Let me run through those really quick. So on the economy, the only one that I care about is improved credit rating. Um, we will get one of these the first year and probably two or more each subsequent year. As far as industry goes, weapon production is the only thing I'm putting in that. Politics, I don't really need any of these, except for we've already increased railroad construction. But I'm not going to go for any of these. That's why I set the funding in politics to 0. Agriculture, the only one I want is farm mechanization. This is the one that not only increases output, but increases available volunteers. Diplomacy, we're going to skip these two. Austrian rifles, British artillery will be the main ones we go for. If we have leftover money, Prussian weapons, and then some of the ships. And finally, military. I am not going to focus on the Confederate ships or carbines. I want the Enfield musketoon. I would very much like the medium range carbines for the cavalry. Rebore muskets, we're skipping. Repeating rifles, we are probably skipping. I don't think they're actually worth it. They don't have that great a range. The rifled artillery we will look into. Artillery outside of the Confederate guns, the Napoleons, which actually that's cast artillery. The Napoleons and Jameses, which will be an initial stopgap until we can get British cannon. Calvary Reform, we are going for both. The artillery reform, the organization reform, which allows corps, we are going for. Sharps rifles, if we end up in a spot where that's possible, I will definitely go for that, but that's going to be further down the list. Supply reform, my last game I discovered this one. You need supply reform to increase the level of supply depots. First level is going to be able to take care of, I think it's 30,000 troops. So easily you can, by 62, you'll be outrunning that and either have to build multiple supply depots all over the place or increase your centrally located ones. Yeah, things like training manuals, I don't think they have, there's not enough time for them to have full effect. Buildings and production. So this is Confederacy. We can go all. It may take, or can we not? There we go. So we have the Bank of New Orleans, and you can run through all of these. This is what they are. Workforce, slave ratio, supply and logistical reform are godly tier. Yes. Yeah, supply is absolutely needed unless you're going to spend all your time building depots. Logistics, definitely huge. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to take the Southern Pacific Railroad. So we got the increased rail supply. Workforce, so let's see if I can actually highlight one of these. 95% of the plantations in Tallahassee, Florida are slaves. The plantations are upgraded, so that's why they have more workforce. You can see what items they supply. Even with the plantations, these items are going to be different depending on where they are located. So Tallahassee, Florida, we've got cotton and rice. Mobile, Alabama, which isn't that far away, is cotton and sugar. Let's actually pull back and go for just the plantations. So you can see some of them are providing, what do we got here? Cotton, sugar, and rice. Some are just cotton. Some have tobacco, which that's Tallahassee, Florida has tobacco. Some are just cotton. So all different sorts of combinations. And it's dependent on where they're built. Um, Mills, we have one mill, and that is producing flour. We will need to take a look at this once more states secede. Farms is another big one that I can benefit very easily. Um, Once again, these produce various goods. This one has crops with livestock. This one doesn't. So actually, the only one with crops is outside of Atlanta. Interesting. So things I haven't even taken a look. Oh, we do have some crops down here in Mississippi and Texas. Um, Farms could be a big thing to increase. We won't have any hospitals. The only bank we have is New Orleans. New Orleans is going to be very important to keep. The banks supply you with extra money, so the more of them you have, the better. Finally, goods and trade. So this is where you can see what, say, artillery requires to produce, the average price, the home price or production. We can produce 1,500 a year, 7,500 artillery ammunition. There is 8,500 artillery pieces in the total market. Our stock is 30. You can run through here, see your deficiencies, here's the demand, here's the production, where the shortfall is. Obviously, anything we don't have in stock, demand is probably, well, coal demand is low. Well, so there's some that we don't have in stock where we may be out producing. Iron, we are definitely not out producing our demand. And that will grow. Leather is the same. What else can I? Yeah, that's the main ones. This will change, obviously, as more states secede. Down here, we can begin to produce federal buildings. Banks, we need more. We need to get the Bank Act. Hospitals, we will construct these throughout the South, especially near the front lines. Virginia, Tennessee, Arkansas will be the first line. Markets, this is one where we're going to need to take a look at the various maps. So we want to look at transport bottlenecks, and this will pop up in red. So if we were to say put trade, the darker the color, the more trade in that area. So Atlanta, Montgomery, New Orleans, Vicksburg, kind of pick out. There's Charleston, there's Savannah, Augusta, Georgia. Head up to the north, Norfolk, Nashville, Memphis, and then New England, of course, is pretty much all. So also when you're looking to build, say, a farm, you want to look at where you have slaves. So Central South Carolina is a prime opportunity. Arkansas, Louisiana, this area would be prime if you're doing a plantation. If you're doing a regular farm, which is 25% non-slave, you're going to need to go closer to one of these areas. And then you're also going to want to take a look at for the land fertility. So you've got cotton, crops, Texas, Indian Territory, Mississippi Valley, and Virginia. North Carolina are going to be your main spots for that. Rice, just through Carolina, Georgia, the low country, if you will. I'm actually not sure why it's popping up here. I don't know of any rice production in North Georgia. Sugar, Louisiana, as it is today. Tobacco, a little bit further north, so Virginia, Kentucky, a little bit into Missouri. And then wood, pretty much everywhere. So if you're building lumber mills. Let's see here. So market increases the flow of goods through an area. News agency, I haven't played with these too much. These are going to, I guess if you're doing really well, this is a good thing. But it increases the intelligence gathering for your military. So it'll provide more military movements and intelligence gathering. Prison camps. I'm still debating the benefits of prison camps for the South. The North already has all the manpower they could ever want. Um, does it make sense for the South to expend food and money to keep a handful of Union troops away from the front lines? I'm not. We'll start with one. I will start with Andersonville. Let's scroll all the way down here, and can we get rid of? Yeah. So Andersonville is actually a town. So we'll build a prison camp by the railroad. That'll be our one camp to start with. Second tab over, you can build brickwork, farm, foundries, ironworks, lumber mills, all of these. The ones that I would really look into are going to be farms, possibly foundries, ironworks. We don't have enough iron to even consider it. Factories is a possibility. Mills are definitely going to be needed, but we need to see what we can hold in the upper South before starting to place those. Finally, the railroads. 3 green dots means that we control all 3 spots. So the Jackson, Alabama, and to Selma Railroad, which is going to connect Selma, Alabama, which already has a rail going up to Talladega, over to Jackson, Mississippi, which is connected to Vicksburg and Monroe, and the north-south line from, well, for us, Columbus, Kentucky, down to New Orleans. This could be a major factor if you're trying to bring troops east-west, because then instead of getting off the train in Montgomery and marching all the way to Jackson, you're just able to get off at Montgomery, march to Selma, back on the train. The Savannah, Tallahassee, if I don't see the Union doing too many naval invasions yet, this would be a very important railroad if you needed to protect this part of the country. Jacksonville, Savannah, the Gulf Coast in general. The Houston Brashear. So this is connecting New Orleans to Houston to the Southern Pacific Railroad. This one is one that I think would have been completed before the war if we're getting the Southern Pacific Railroad. So this will be one of the first ones I approve. We will need to, all right, so to build it, it will increase tax revenues by 7.1 million. It'll take 177 days to construct. Transport capacity will go up by 1,000%, but it will cost us $45 million to construct. All right. Also, subsidized funding. We'll need $9 million in industrial funding before to cut back on the cost of this thing. That's probably the first one, maybe the first one we'll go with. Connecting everything up once again. So if you had the Savannah Tallahassee Railroad, if you had the Houston Brashear, this is one that's going to give you complete the Gulf Coast, where you could go from Virginia to Texas rapidly. So for the South, this could be a huge railroad. If you wanted another route to the west, we have the New Orleans, Monroe, Mississippi to Shreveport, Louisiana. This does go into Texas. Now this is another one that combines with a second railroad, the Texas Shreveport. So this would give you a northern route into Texas into the west. I don't know that we would need both. Ones that could come up once southern states secede. And if we were going with the Houston Shreveport, this one would make sense. But it would go Little Rock into Dallas. Little Rock into Memphis would also connect that. So this would give you a very northern route through the west. The South just simply, I don't think, has the time, resources, or anything else to actually build that much rail during the war. Let's see here. Davenport, Cumberland Gap is a possibility. We already have the Central Kentucky Railroad and one going into Columbus or towards Paducah. This one I'm not sure is needed for the South as much as it is the North. The North having another supply line would be huge. And really, that's about it for the railroads we can build. We already have the Decatur and Tecumseh, the Pensacola Montgomery, Selma Talladega, the Jacksonville and Cedar Key, Charleston and Montgomery, which is pretty much all of Georgia. Then the Chattanooga Savannah, which is the other way through Georgia. So Charleston Montgomery is east-west, Chattanooga Savannah north-south. The Louisiana New Orleans rail line, which heads not much of anywhere. Vicksburg Monroe, which is a little tail from Vicksburg into northern Louisiana. Mobile Corinth, which is one of the north-south lines through the Mississippi, Alabama area. The other one being the St. Helena to Holly Springs, straight down central Mississippi and branching off to Vicksburg. Vicksburg Jackson. And let's see. We will get the Columbia Raleigh heading through North Carolina. We've got the Savannah and Cheraw, which heads coastally on South Carolina, and the Wilmington Greenville, which heads from North Carolina to Greenville, South Carolina. Memphis and Bowling Green. So once Tennessee secedes, we will get, that's Western Tennessee. Nashville, Knoxville is Eastern Tennessee and Northern Alabama. The Houston Galveston, which is the only part of the Southern Rail Network that makes sense for the Southern Pacific line. Gives us a coastal reach to the Gulf for shipping. And then, of course, the Southern Pacific. Technically, I think we're waiting for, well, no, we're not waiting for Houston to secede. But all right. So that is kind of an overview of the economy and how things should work in the South. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Consider clicking on the next video also. This has been Nearly Offshore Gaming. Till next time.